Welcome into the studio, Brett Ralph, the owner of the Melbourne Aces.
Pleased to be here.
Very excited to chat, and we've actually got Jon Deeble, head coach of the Melbourne Aces, on the line, joining us from Brisbane. How are you, Deebs?
Yeah, good, Simone. How you going?
Good, thank you. Big news this week, and I want to get straight into this. I've been surprised with the lack of media attention around this, a huge sports story, and of course I'm a little biased. I'm a big baseball fan, but the Aces will no longer be in the Australian Baseball League. Tell us, Ralphie, were you deserting a sinking ship, or what's the status of the ABL at this point, in your view?
Look, I'm probably not the right person to talk about the status of the ABL. We had to look at what was best for our organisation. We had been trying over a number of years to try and get on a course that we thought could one day be sustainable. But at some point, you've got to realise that you're just throwing good money after bad. If you keep doing the same things the same way, you're going to get the same results. And unfortunately, we have not been able to get anybody to listen to the areas of concern that we have. And we had to plot a different path, and we have.
Yep, that's fair enough. This has been playing out for a long time, clearly, in the background. Can you give us some more information on sort of when these conversations started, how long this has been happening?
Well, look, my brother Sean and I have been the owners of the Melbourne Aces since 2019, and during our period in the sport, let's take a look at what's happened. You know, you've got Perth, who their original owners are all out now. They're about to hopefully hand that team over to new ownership. You've got the Adelaide team, which was started off with the Adelaide Crows, and now the Pelligra group are there. You've got Brisbane have been through 3 different ownership groups in our time there. The Sydney team has sent 3 people broke. Canberra the same. You've got Auckland and Korea, which were both expelled from the league for unpaid debts, which were never resolved, and that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Australian baseball community have had to foot the bill for. And whilst we've always made sure that we've paid our bills, and at times we've paid the bills for other teams, you just can't keep going like that. So we've been trying to plot a course that could one day be sustainable and get the team to at least a break-even position. We can't do that. Nobody was listening, so we've decided to head in a different direction and see if we can't create something that has a chance to have a viable future. And of course, we wanted to make sure that, you know, we'd built a reasonable size audience in Melbourne. We didn't want to abandon them. We wanted to provide them with an alternative, and we're actually very excited about what could be the future for the Melbourne Aces, playing teams from around Asia and around the world.
It's a good segue for Deebs, because Deebs obviously involved in the first iteration of the ABL, and obviously then moving into the Aces coaching role. And you've been involved in the ABL in a capacity for a very long time. Is it a sad time for you, knowing that, you know, the Aces are out, but potentially it's the downfall of the ABL? Like, how are you feeling about what's been happening?
Oh, look, I think that it was inevitable that it was probably going to happen at some point in time, but I'm sure it's disappointing for players. But on the other hand, I can see a bright future. You know, this is not the end, especially for the Melbourne Aces. I can't speak for the other teams, but you know, we've been working, and Justin Huber and Ralphie have been working very hard, and I have behind the scenes. We're very well connected in a lot of places overseas. So, you know, we're throwing a lot of things around at the moment. But as everyone's aware, there's going to be Aces games this year at home. We'll go to the KBO 4 League. I know there's a lot of thinking and a lot of things in place. So, you know, at the end of the day, hopefully moving forward for a long time, there's going to be opportunities for our guys to play, get scouted. And, you know, and that's the other probably sad thing, is that there's been a lot of players signed out of the ABL with major league teams and in Japan now. So, but those opportunities are still going to be there. And I'm excited, actually, about the direction that the Aces have taken and where we're going to go.
Sounds great. Ralphie, just going back to that last question, was there a point in time, I know this is years in the making, but is this 2 weeks ago, a month ago, is it 6 weeks ago where you sort of went in to meet with the ABL? And we'll come back to that a bit later, but can you give us a time frame of when this sort of...
Oh, look, I guess what you're asking is, was there a straw that broke the camel's back?
I am.
Yeah, look, there probably was. After repeatedly having putting forward the positions that we had on all sorts of matters, from broadcast to scheduling to whatever, and constantly having outcomes that we felt were detrimental to the manner in which we were looking to drive the competition and drive the sport in this country. I made it clear to members of the ABL board that we'd about had enough, and that it might be time for us to move on, and they requested an opportunity to talk to us one more time to reassure us that no, they were serious about addressing some of the concerns we had. We had that meeting, and that meeting fell apart pretty quickly. It degenerated into a pretty ugly meeting, which frankly I terminated and said, you know what, we're wasting our time here. We're going to call it a day. At that point, we started to look at how we could escalate what we had been doing with Asian teams, because we very much didn't want to do what every other ownership group in the ABL has done in the past, which is to hand in the keys and walk away and hope that somebody else would pick up the pieces. I've seen a lot of people talking around, management groups who sell the team on to the next owner. That's not what happens. What happens is you try and find somebody who's ready to write new and bigger checks. And there's just not that many people around who are prepared to do it. Now, there may be somebody who's prepared to write some big checks to put another team in Melbourne and play in the ABL. And if there are, we'll assist them. But we've got to head in a different direction. The Melbourne Aces is, we own the brand, we own the trademarks, the logos. We're going to continue on. We're going to make sure that anybody who's been a fan of the Aces in the past or wants to be a fan in the future is going to be able to watch live international standard baseball at Melbourne Ballpark.
Fantastic. It's exactly what the fans will want to hear. I want to break this down a little bit, and feel free to address this however you feel appropriate, but there was a press release put out that did talk about some of the issues that you, as the Aces organisation, had addressed with the ABL, including sanctions, player and coach sanctions, financial security of the league long-term, cost reduction measures. Can you divulge any more information about sort of some of those things that have taken place, that have caused sort of some concern for your organisation in the past?
Well, look, before I do that, I want to make this clear, okay? We're not looking to apportion blame for what's happened. The people who work at the ABL and the people with Baseball Australia, they're out there working as hard as they can to take the sport in the direction that they feel is the best for the sport. They have their opinions and they're entitled to them, right? Let's not forget that Baseball Australia is writing some pretty big checks as well to try and keep the league afloat. And we provide some assistance, but rest assured, the overwhelming majority of the cost of running the league office is borne by Baseball Australia. And they have to be true to themselves and take the sport in the direction that they want to take it. But we did not see eye to eye with some of the areas that they thought were important to them, and tried to explain to them that we thought some of their decisions were damaging to what we were trying to do. So, look, I don't want to get into too many specifics, but we felt in a lot of ways they were trying to sanitise the game to a point where there would be no interest. So you have a situation where a manager gets ejected from a game, and we felt at times that the penalties were too onerous. managers getting ejected from baseball games is not a case of a manager being undisciplined or suddenly losing his mind. They're strategic. A manager will get to the point where they feel they need to fly the flag for their team, and their pitchers and catchers and other players expect the manager to stand up for them when appropriate. So, a manager just doesn't suddenly lose his mind and carry on in a way that gets him thrown out of a game. He goes out there to make a point and to elevate the situation to the point where the umpires are understanding the level of concern that the team has for what's going on. Now, that's important from a competitive perspective and a morale point from the team, but for me as an owner of a team, it's the theatre of it. The fans want to see their manager stand up for the team as well. Now, you don't want it happening every game, but from time to time, you want it to happen. And the fans love it, and they get behind their manager and behind their team, and they become enthusiastic and passionate about what's going on. Now, the ABL felt that, no, it's a terrible example for club baseball, and, managers getting ejected from games is, we can't have that. And so they throw the book at managers for getting ejected from games. And we're saying you're going to sanitise it to the point where nobody will be interested in watching. Trust us. We're trying to market this game. We don't want it happening every game, but occasionally it's entertaining. That's just one small area where, we felt that the league office was unnecessarily getting in the way of what we were trying to provide.
That's really good context and insight. Is there a world in which the Aces ever play in the ABL again?
Oh, look, you never say never. I can't see it. I'd be very surprised. But you would never say never. I guess the most likely scenario would be, it's no secret that Baseball Australia would certainly entertain an investor coming in and taking a large stake in the league. And if that was to happen and we were to see a more professional approach to what was going on and we felt it was viable, and if at that time they wanted us as part of their league, it could happen. But I would like to think what we're going to be doing in Asia is going to be very, very exciting, and it comes with risk. It absolutely comes with risk and could potentially be very expensive, but we're prepared to take that risk, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a product that people will find entertaining, and they'll keep coming along, and our players will be able to play at an even higher standard than what they've been playing at recently, which is quite a high standard.
Yep. Just in line with that, there are reports that you attempted to buy the league at some point in time. Are those reports in any way true? And if they are, did those sort of efforts fall on deaf ears, or did it just not work out, or what can you tell us about?
There was a period of time when Sean and I made an offer to buy the league and to run the league in its entirety. That's probably 4 years ago now. That was absolutely not on the cards at this time. We took our run at it. It was considered. That was one thing that the ABL considered carefully, and they decided that they felt that the league would be best in their hands, which they're entitled to do, and we don't bear any ill will regarding that. They heard us out. But we hadn't entertained the idea of taking over the league since we made that offer.
Because of the current financial situation or the structure of the league, or is there a reason that hasn't been a recent?
Well, at the time we did that, we probably didn't have quite as many sporting endeavours underway. We've got a fair bit on our plate at the moment, and we want to make sure that we're able to give the correct amount of attention to all of those. And taking on yet another one with the league, we probably wouldn't have been in a situation where we could have done that and given it the necessary priority that it would have required.
Yep. I'd be interested to hear both of you provide a response to this one, and then we'll move into sort of the future, because I don't want to get caught up on, what has been and this situation. But is there space for a professional baseball league in this country? And if there is, what do the leaders of the sport need to do to make sure that it succeeds, in your opinion?
I believe there could be. I think one of the issues we have right at the moment is that with any enterprise in its early stages, it's going to require seed capital, and it's going to require people who are prepared to wear a loss for a period of time before they start to see a return on their investment. And unfortunately, I think we've chewed up a lot of the available capital. The number of people who are prepared to throw away, I think the best result in the ABL recently has probably been $250,000 loss per year, right up to we've had years where we've lost close to $2 million in a year. There's not too many of those people left around. I think the single biggest area where we failed to get any traction was in the way the league was marketed. We probably didn't have a coordinated marketing campaign to properly promote the sport. I mean, we're 13, 14 seasons in, and we've never had a legitimate league sponsor. And I think that is no reflection on the people who were trying to do that. The league office didn't have the budget to have enough commercial people to go out and chase down those opportunities. So a little bit underfunded there. And certainly the plan we had when we looked to take over the league is that's the area that we would have gone at the hardest, to provide a significant marketing budget to try and get the sport rolling. I just don't know right now where you would source the money, but it's possible. As I said earlier, BA are exploring potential partners, and if they were to find an investor with a big checkbook who came in and did some serious marketing of what is a great sport, and the people who go and watch our sport come back. If you can get them there, they will come back. We've shown that out at Melbourne Ballpark. When we inherited the team, our average attendance was 400 people to a game. And last year, as you know, we had the league's highest attendance at more than the next two teams combined. But we threw everything we could at it to get people out there, and once we got them out there, they would come back. So if we can market the sport right and get people out there, they will come back. Australians love their sport, in particular Melburnians love their sport. There's not a lot of sport in the West, and I see, there are some critics about where the Aces were located and would it have been better to be in the southeast. We love Melbourne Ballpark. We think it's the home of baseball in this state. With the help of the very dedicated staff and volunteers who go out there, believe we've turned it into a nice place to spend an evening watching sport. And in the western suburbs, there's not a lot. Most of our sport, you've got to cross the Yarra to attend. So, we think it's a great location to be. So, potentially, I would never say that it's impossible to have a professional baseball league in Australia, but it's a hard road.
Deebs?
Look, when this league started, after our first league failed, I remember having a conversation with Mark Peters, and I said to him, I don't think this is going to work. I think we need to have an Australian team, a Korean team, a Taiwanese team, a Chinese team, and a Japanese team, and travel up around, and then they come down to Australia and play 3 games in Perth, 3 in Adelaide, 3 in Melbourne, 3 in Canberra, 3 in Sydney, 3 in Brisbane, take off. The next one's coming. And Mark was the head of the Sports Commission then. I think he was the president of Baseball Australia, but that was the idea that I had. That would have strengthened club baseball back up. So instead of, taking a chunk out of club baseball, you would only have taken, your basic top 28 players. So, but I was talking back, 10 or 12 years ago, but no one really listened to what I had to say anyway. So it was probably a new point. But yeah, look, I think it's tough. There's no funding from the governments, and the money that Ralphie's put in. And people don't realise too, he's got no skin in this game. It's my job. It's the player's job, and not just Ralphie, but the other owners that they've never had skin in the game themselves. They just love baseball, and but look, I think it'd be very tough.
So categorically, no breakaway league on the horizon?
Absolutely not.
Let's talk about the future a little bit, and this will provide really good context for the fans. Melbourne Ballpark, significant investment in infrastructure over many years, and again, a bit biased because my father's been out there doing a lot of hands-on work and done a brilliant job with a lot of other volunteers and, people who go out and pour their heart and soul into that place. Who owns the stadium? For clarity for the fans, what will happen to the stadium now that the Aces aren't in the ABL? Can you give us some insight into that?
Well, who owns the stadium is a very, very interesting subject. So one of the difficulties out there is trying to tie down who actually has responsibility. So I think you have the Department of the Environment owns the land, but Department of Sport owns the stadium, and the council has some say over the zoning of the area, and really, whilst all of them will have their say about what happens out there, there's no one you can pin down to try and put some funding into the place. At the moment, the Melbourne Aces Baseball Club Proprietary Limited, which has a number of different business investments, one of which is the Melbourne Aces baseball team, holds the management rights for Melbourne Ballpark, and we'll hold those until 2032. We have a 10-year option to extend it out to 2042 should we wish. We provide all of the management, all of the administration out there. We appoint all the contractors there, and ground staff, etc. They're all employees of the Melbourne Aces. There's really only one person who works out there who isn't totally funded by the Melbourne Aces, and that person's employed by the Stadium Committee of Management, who have two sources of funding, which is the Melbourne Aces Baseball Club and Baseball Victoria. So it's very complex and complicated, but for some years now and for some years to come, it'll be the Melbourne Aces who manage Melbourne Ballpark.
You talked about business ventures, and when I say you, the Melbourne Aces have got an investment in a number of sporting organisations more specifically. The press release suggested cumulative losses of more than $11 million. I'm sure that's being kind. As such a savvy businessman, why the ongoing commitment when there was financial bleeding of such a significant number, Ralphie?
Look, baseball is my family sport. I have three brothers. We all played baseball from when we were kids. One of my brothers is a Australian champion. And we're passionate about the sport. You get invested in the people you run into out there, whether that be the staff, the volunteers, the players, the fans. And we're fortunate, my brother Sean and I, we have been successful in business, and we're lucky. We're able, to afford to do some things because we want to do them. And when you're in a position to help out and you see something that you think is worthy of being helped, you try to do your bit, and we don't like to fail. So you keep persisting, and you try to meet the expectations of everybody involved. One of the key components of what we're trying to do is that Australia's a significant player in baseball on the world stage. And I'm not talking about players going to professional contracts in the US and Asia. I'm talking about our national team and the pride that Australians have in their national team. And our Aussie baseballers do it pretty tough. We've had situations of, and I know you can speak to this, Simone, of a bloke who'd be framing up a house one day and then he's got to race off to training and, you know, jump on a plane and go to an international tournament. We've had carpet layers who have been laying carpet during the day and pulling on the Australian uniform at night. And they're playing against players who are pampered, who have every conceivable advantage that you can imagine. And under the management of Jon Deeble, who's on this call, we've had some incredible successes. Silver medal at the Olympics and very high national rankings worldwide for our team. And a lot of those players have achieved their best results post their international professional careers. So there needs to be somewhere for them to play where they can continue to hone their skills and continue to see international level competition, so that when they do go and represent their country, they're not suddenly facing pitching that they haven't seen for some time. So there's a certain amount of national pride as well in wanting to make sure that there's opportunities for those guys, because they're great guys. They're our friends, and we want them to succeed, and we want to help them to succeed.
Great answer. You've made the decision to continue the organisation, and you've already somewhat answered this question for me, because it would have been easy to shut the doors, and particularly from a financial standpoint, just sort of almost wipe your hands of the situation and move on to something else. You're not doing that. It's courageous. You know, it's a really gutsy move, and it's commendable by all involved, notably you and your brother. But is it just the passion you have for the sport? Is it, you talked about not wanting to fail. Do you want to do more than's been done before to see this thrive? Is that how you feel about what's to come?
Look, baseball's a great sport. You know, it's a great game to play. It's a great game to watch when it's done at its best. That's a lifelong passion. So I want to continue to see high-level baseball played here. Now, one door closed. We couldn't continue to go down the path that we were going. That was just never going to get us anywhere. So we've looked for an alternative. Now, it's, as I said before, it's risky. You know, it's a difficult path, but we're looking to give it our best shot to try. But ultimately, whether or not it's successful will in large part be determined by whether or not people want it. If they want it, great, we'll keep going. If they don't want it, well, you know, sometimes you might say, you know, you might not enjoy failure, but you do need to be able to accept it when there's no alternative. So we'll give this our best shot. Hopefully the fans will get behind it and they'll enjoy it, and we'll move on to bigger and better things. But if it's clear that they don't want it, well then maybe we will go back to option one, which is to just pack it up and go and focus harder on our other activities.
Deebs, I know you were involved and Ralphie in a meeting with the players and the staff involved in the organisation. Obviously, you know, when we're talking about the Aces as a business, right? But obviously the key stakeholders are the players and the staff and the volunteers and the people who do the hard yards for the club. What's the feedback been from the people involved closely to what's happened over the last few days?
Yeah, we met with the players Wednesday. What's today? Thursday, Tuesday. And look, I think there was shock at the start, and but a few questions come out, and you know, one of the questions was, you know, what was going to happen and all that sort of stuff, but we've had a couple of players go down to Altona and say, we're right behind this, we're in. I got a message from two other players, we're in. So it was Greg Bird was straight on the phone to me. Deebs, I'm in. A lot of the imports, every one of the imports is like, we're in. So it's been overwhelming, to be quite honest, that all the players are in. And as I said, they're going to be all contracted. They still don't know a lot of the stuff that probably Ralphie Hughes and I know, what we're looking at trying to do. And so it was good. There wasn't a whole lot of questions. We're going to meet back in 2 weeks. And hopefully we'll have more answers for them. All they know is they're going to be contracted. They're going to get at least 30 games this year. They're going to the KBO Fall League, and we're going to be playing at Altona in January. So right now there's probably not a whole lot of other options for them. I wouldn't have thought, but no, it was good. Shock at first, but I think that they're starting to understand and that. And as I said to him, I've said to Ralphie, and he'll tell you this on a dozen occasions, I keep walking up to him and I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? And this has been over the last couple of years when different things haven't gone, the way we think they should go, what he talked about before and why. But the one thing that he was adamant on in our conversations was he's not going to let the players down. So, they are so lucky, and some of them at times don't appreciate it, but they are so lucky that they've got an owner in him that, he doesn't want to let them down, and that's why he's going to give it everything he can to keep these guys playing.
The fans have been speaking, and everyone has their opinion now on social media. Some of those are great, some are not, but, we see them all occur or appear. Some people are suggesting you're not in the ABL. It's glorified exhibition games. Why would we want to go and watch that? Tell us why.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things I want to address there, right? So, the immediate reaction was that there were hundreds and hundreds of comments of hurt and disappointed fans who were so upset that the Melbourne Aces aren't going to be competing in the ABL going forward. Right. And that hurts, but it's great. And what's great about it is that's how much they cared. They were in. They loved their team and they wanted to continue to support their team. And so I understand the disappointment and how they would feel that way. And it's actually a good thing, because you know what would be worse? If all of the people who knew who the Aces were had been at the end, well, who cares? So it was actually great that they were upset, and they're entitled to, voice their concerns. We followed up with a more detailed explanation, mainly because, look, I didn't want to make it about apportioning blame. I absolutely respect the right of the people who run the ABL to make the best calls that they can make based on how they feel about what's right. We just had differences that could not be reconciled, and so therefore we needed to part. Hopefully the fans will come to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and they'll get behind us. It's been a really hard road to get people to come along and have a look at a sport that most of our fans, and we know this about, most of the fans we've had over the last couple of years are new to baseball. And we did that deliberately. We targeted the local area and the West and said, hey, here's a local sport. It's easily accessible to you. It's a very affordable family night out. We're going to do everything we can to make it entertaining and so that, young kids, I'm sure there are many young kids who go out to the baseball more for the fireworks than for the baseball. But hopefully as they're watching, and waiting for the fireworks to come on, they're starting to feel involved with the sport, and, they'll start to understand what the sport's about and what it's got to offer. We're going to continue to do that, and, I trust that the majority of fans will come on the journey with us. They've been incredibly loyal to the team. It's amazing when you see the fans there, the number of fans who are wearing our merch. They want to show their colours, and they put their money behind the team. So we didn't want to leave them with nothing, with empty Friday nights and weekends. Hopefully they'll see this as something new, give it a try, and see if perhaps they might enjoy it as much as they've enjoyed going out and watching us play in the ABL.
Deebs, involved for such a long time, as I said, even the first iteration of the ABL, you've seen Altona, Melbourne Ballpark, grow into this beautiful place where you can go, and there's a community out there now. That's how I feel when I go out there. It's a nice place to be. There's the stuff that's happened around the ballpark's fantastic. You've seen it grow, and you've seen the community of fans grow. Has the atmosphere changed in your mind pretty significantly, and has that had an impact on the players and the organisation?
Absolutely. I think the last year, I said this to Ralphie the other day, that it was amazing. We had 2,200 one night, 2,500, 2,700. The place was rocking. It was jam-packed. And the interesting thing is, when I go outside or whether I go out the back, I don't know any of the people. They're locals. And, we do a great job getting the kids from the clubs. They run out onto the field. But at the end of the day, people walk past you and say hello to you, and you have no idea who they are. The Aces have done an amazing job getting people in that area, and the atmosphere is amazing. The field's amazing. That scoreboard, Ralphie paid out of his own pocket, I think it was $700,000. The new batting cages, $400,000. Bringing the fences in, the new clubhouse, the new kiosk this year. I don't know how much that cost, but I know it would have cost an arm and a leg. But it's a great place to be. It's, as Ralphie said before, it's cheap entertainment. People go there because they can take their family, and I don't know how much it costs to get in, but it's not a lot. And they get free popcorn, and they get an ice cream on Sundays. They get to run out on the field, and so it's really built. And this year more than any, the fan involvement was amazing. And I tip my hat to our players too. They are always out there signing autographs after the game. They do a really good. In fact, our after game talks, I'm forever dragging them in to get the talks done so they can go back out there. But they do a great job with that, so they play their part also.
I know you don't want to go into too much detail about what's to come, but career at the end of the year, going over there in October, and then we're going to see baseball out at the ballpark in January and February. Can either of you give us a bit of a snapshot of some of the things to expect for the fans so they know?
Well, look, certainly we've already signed deals to play some KBO teams, which that's a remarkable opportunity. The Korean Baseball League is the third best league in the world. These are real quality players who are coming to Melbourne, and they're putting their team on the field, and they're going to play against the Aces, and we'll have our work cut out for us. So that'll be entertaining in itself. But our hope is that over the summer we'll run 6 events, multi-game events over the summer. We'd like to see most of the games be in January and February. We understand people are, pretty busy pre-Christmas, but we may play some games pre-Christmas as well. For our players who are in the national team, it's very important that they get some high-quality play, which they will get at the Korean Fall League. We will broadcast those games back in Australia so people can follow their team. So this is very new to us. So we're actually a long way down the path to have already secured the games that we have at home, when this is a very recent development. But certainly by the summer, we would hope to have a half a dozen different teams visiting Melbourne. We would like to establish some rivalries which could go on season after season, so that it may be a mini tournament in itself, but have the same teams coming back and form our own traditions with that. And over time, they will come to have some meaning to fans of both teams.
One more question, and maybe Deebs, you can provide some thought on this, but there has been commentary online suggesting that if players don't play in the ABL, then they won't be eligible for the national team. Do you think that's on the cards? Is that a possibility?
Look, I can't speak for the ABF. I think it'd be silly if that was the case. We're going to get these players ready as best we can to represent Australia. At the end of the day, that doesn't do anyone any good by, them not playing, or they have to do this to do that. You go to the World Baseball Classic, and I've been in 4 or 5 of them, and we've got Mike Piazza, Jason Grilli playing for Italy. We got Tommy Edmonds last year, the Dodger second baseman, playing for Korea. So, they're not playing in their home countries, or they're not even their home countries. But, look, I think that's all online talk. As far as I know, talking with Hughes and Ralphie, that, this is amicable. And as Ralphie said, there's no one from the Aces putting blame on anybody. Our ownership's got to do what's in the best interest of our team. And I think it's exciting, some of the things that we're talking about, not just what Ralphie's spoken about then, but I think that would be really short-sighted if that was to happen.
I absolutely have not heard anything directly from the ABL or from Baseball Australia along those lines. And it would be completely out of character for them to do that. I have never known anybody from BA or the ABL to ever do anything that would prevent any Australian player from being able to achieve their goals, whether that being playing professionally or playing for the national team. We most definitely have had our differences about what the best direction to go, and some of those discussions have been quite colourful. But at no time have I ever thought that they have deliberately set about trying to prevent any Australian from achieving the best possible career path. They've been hugely supportive in terms of their attitude to that at all times, and I can't fault them in that area, and I would be very surprised if they attempted to stop any Australian from being able to play for the national team.
On top of that, we've had Mike Walker play on the national team. We've had quite a few players that we've picked up from overseas that have played on the WBC team that haven't played on any baseball in Australia. Mike Walker ended up coming out and playing in Australia, but we've had 2 or 3 guys that have had Australian citizenship that haven't played in the country that have played for the national team.
You've both been great providing insight on what's sort of happened, the relationship with the ABL, and it sounds like it's, there's a lot of respect from the Aces organisation for the ABL, irrelevant of what's sort of taken place. And you've created great excitement for the fans. And as an Aces fan, I share that excitement in listening to you both. Are there any final thoughts or any final comments you two would like to make, knowing that the baseball community is going to listen to this?
I guess the one last point I'd like to make is this. I ran through earlier in our conversation the various management teams who have owned ABL teams and put their heart and soul into trying to make it work, only at some point to arrive at the decision that they just can't go any further. And right now, we've got some ownership groups who are battling against huge odds to try and keep their teams alive now. We at the Aces wish them well. I understand that they may be upset that the loss of the Aces from the ABL does not help them in what they're trying to achieve, and I am sorry for that. But we've made our decision. We have to do what we got to do. We wish them all the best with what they're doing. And if any of those teams should decide that they can't continue as well, please, I say to all the fans, respect what they've done and how hard they've tried to make their team successful in Australia. The other point too that I wanted to make, that you talk about what's happened out at Melbourne Ballpark, and it's a vastly different place now to what it was half a dozen years ago. That has happened through the incredible hard work of a very small team out there with the Melbourne Aces. Yes, we put some money into it, but nobody can stretch a dollar the way Mick Wern can and get the biggest bang for your buck that you can out there, and we're very grateful to him for the work he's done. But the entire team out there at the Aces who continue to battle away, because it is a very small group. Most national teams, have dozens, if not hundreds, of people working in their office. We've got 4, and they work incredibly hard. And this has been a distressing period for them because, they have very close personal and passionate relationships with a whole lot of people out there. They continue to try very hard to keep baseball alive in Melbourne, and I hope your listeners recognise that and get behind them and support their efforts as well.
I just want to make sure that the Aces fans keep the faith, and come and support us, because it's going to be an exciting time. And, we want to fill that stadium, when we play at home in January. And, there's going to be some great games, great competition. As I said, Greg Bird, first one to put his hand up. He's back on board. All the players that I've spoken to, I haven't had one negative back from any players. But let's get behind it, and let's make something special down there.
Brilliant. I'm excited. I can't wait for everything to unfold and hear more about the schedule for the 25-26 season. The Holmes Glen Sports Degrees media team will be there, and a big thank you to the students here who love taking an interest in the Aces, and we've been out to the stadium and we'll be out there supporting you, and right behind you to you, Ralphie, and to you, Deebs, on the line. For what you're doing and continue to do, a huge thank you, and we're right behind you.
We look forward to seeing you at the ball.
Good on you, Simone.
Thanks, guys.